Bill Simmons, Artistic Director of the Phoenix Theater Cultural Center in Indianapolis, Indiana. And today I have two guests for the one-to-one with Bill Simmons. I have Justin Sears-Watson, the Artistic Director of Phoenix Rising Dance Company here in Indianapolis, who performs out of the Phoenix Theater Cultural Center, and his twin brother, Brandon Lee Sears, who is a performer in London, in London's West End. So welcome you both. I started the conversation with asking Brandon where he was, he's physically in London, but where he is with the pandemic, what the lessons of 2020 have been, and I'd love to also hear what he thinks is coming in 2021. So Brandon, once again, what has 2020 been all about for you? And welcome.
Hello, Bill. Hello, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really glad that you're recording because I get to self-edit.
Absolutely.
The first time around was so lovely, though.
It was good.
Artists, we all love a good self-edit, don't we?
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
It's so good to be on here talking to you both. So where am I? The question is, where am I and where are we going with in 2021?
Yeah, that's probably a lot to unpack in one question for me to have thrown that all at you. So let's just start with how 2020 has affected you. And we talked a little bit about your education and what you're teaching, which I think for me, being a teacher right now has been so wonderful, being teaching in this period of time. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the moment, I'm not performing because theaters are closed, and my main source, the main source of income, my main work was in theater. And I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to be performing consistently in the West End since 2016, which is a blessing in itself. And I had just actually finished a contract in February and Come From Away. So I'd already finished. Yeah. So the original,
beautiful show.
Yeah, it's a lovely show. And so when the lockdown, I was telling you before, when the lockdown first happened, I think I was going, trying to use the time to do things that I always wanted to do, or maybe that I didn't have time to do whenever I was working. Trying to be efficient. My nature is kind of a type A personality. So, achievements, accolades, and trying to overachievement, which can be really exhausting. So once I was exhausted enough, I kind of took a step back and just thought, what should I do now? Obviously, as well, the killing of George Floyd and the kind of the explosion of the Black Lives Matter movement happened here, and that caused me to look at myself and unpick a lot of things that were going on internally with me, especially when we consider identity. And so at the moment, I'm teaching a lot, and it's so funny you mentioned, I've heard you mention young mentors before, and I think that I'm having a huge learning lesson when it comes to identity, what my professional identity is, what identity is in general anyways, and through the learners that I teach, the learning participants that are participating in the learning with me. And so trying not to make it hierarchical, but is that a word?
Yeah. No, and the whole idea, I love that, because that's kind of what I'm getting ready to embark on, is training with a BIPOC artistic director in Chicago who specializes in devised work with special attention to equity, diversity, and inclusion, and decolonizing the rehearsal room and the whole process. So I'm fascinated by what you're saying.
And so it's wonderful because I'm an actor, singer, and dancer, trained in those when I was in the States, and quite intensely in all three at different times. And I always separated them. I studied opera, and then I studied acting, and then I studied classical dance, and in forms that were by themselves and on their own, separate techniques. They're not really separate techniques, but focusing specifically on the technique of dancing, in classical ballet companies. And what I've been doing now is reconciling all that training as I teach young actors. And what I've realized is that there's this merging of identities that happens whenever we share art anyway. So like thinking of art as someone's, or as an expression of someone's identity. And anytime I share the space with someone, especially with their art, I'm a part of and witnessing and kind of interacting and rubbing up against what their identity is. And it's really all quite deep. And it's in the back of my mind all the time. And I think that, you know, when you ask me where theater's going and where art is going, I think that it's, there's so much I think that it will go to, I think we've had art that has always been an expression of one's identity, but when you combine political activism, affect, emotion,
Absolutely.
and all of that, I think there will be such a merging of all of those as we look into 2021, especially from voices who haven't been heard in the past.
Absolutely.
And the combination of all this. So it's I'm just learning so much from the learners that I participate in learning with, and from meeting people about where it's all going. Art. Yeah, I'll speak in terms of art, I guess, rather than not talking about only fine art, but art when I'm talking about theater and performing arts, I guess.
And so, Justin, how is this impacting your work? I know, you know, you and I have been talking about how we build work together in
Yeah,
21 and 22. And
it's yeah, I would agree with Brandon. You know, before we found out we weren't recording or whatever, but I was speaking about kind of focusing on the and myself as like an individual artist and kind of digging deeper. But what's interesting is that a lot of teaching, like, so right now within the company, a lot of the work that the dancers are getting is through teaching. And so actually our dancers are, some of them are earning some income right now through Arts for Learning. We were able to pivot and get our school show into to film it. And so what's great is that I'm really passionate about arts integration and also teaching. What's interesting is that we've always known that when young children feel better or feel well and have a sense of identity in who they are, they do better. But artists, we've always known that, right? Within any of our art, it is natural for us to connect our art to our emotions, to our identity, and how we see the world. I believe that in 2021, everyone is going to now embrace this more, because we are starting to realize that we don't feel well, that we're not well, in a sense. And so what's really great is that I've been working on like a project, this project called the Black Ops Dance Project. And what's really powerful, I think it's going to be powerful because we're going to take this idea of art, but like Brandon was saying, you know, merging the art together. So visual art, media, film, singing, acting, dancing, and go through this process. And kind of, I've spoken with you about that, Bill. But I think what's really great is that we'll be able to dig into our life experiences, our identity, but also go out into the community and help others who are going through the pandemic right now, and help children do that as well. Also providing like performance, because anytime, you know, anyone sees a performance, they're allowed to dig deeper, right? Or we connect with them on an emotional level and help them find some sense of where they are in their lives, and investigate their identity and how the pandemic is affecting them, or how the Black Lives Matter movement is affecting them, and just how, you know, life experience is. So, so yeah, I feel like that's where art is going. Very, these lots of collaboration, and merging of arts as opposed to having them so separate. Yeah, I think that's the future really of creation.
Tell us a little bit about the Black Ops Dance project. I
Mhm.
was actually rereading something I wrote on your behalf in early November, and you just mentioned it. So a little bit for those people who will end up watching this interview,
Mhm.
what the purpose of that is, and yeah, what the purpose of it is, and what you're hoping to achieve with it.
So when in February, when we the company did Nina Simone,
Which was
I had it.
beautiful, by the way. I mean, I just
Thank
still
you.
talk to everybody about Nina Simone, and just
Yeah.
what a amazing piece that was. And I was so glad that that happened. And then our production of The Agitators before the pandemic, shut
Yeah.
down our Phoenix. So
Absolutely, yeah. For me, in full transparency, it was just like a coming home, right? So Brandon knows our lives, our young lives are were pretty horrible. um, and but like I said, it's been my greatest gift. And I don't know about Brandon, but I would say he believes it's been a gift to him too. But I won't speak for him. And so with Nina, for me, it was
Until he
really
does.
powerful. What'd you
I'm
say?
just teasing. I'm teasing my
So
twin.
yes, but spoken with each other, so I know that it has been a great gift for him too. So yeah, Nina Simone, it was like coming home. For me, it was so powerful because working with Matt on Voice, Matt Davis, Andre Williams, Mariel Greenlee, Corbin, Fritz, all the dancers in the company. I was like, this is what art is supposed to be. Collaboration. Anytime you bring two or more perspectives together to take an idea and bring it into fruition or manifestation, that is, in essence, the most divine creation. And so to me, it was like, this is like, I love collaborating. I love having different perspectives. I love facilitating this idea of merging art forms. And so with the Black Ops Dance Project, this will be a project in which I will help facilitate other artists, about 6 artists or more, depending on funding, to come together through their different mediums and combine their artistic voices along with dance. It'll culminate in a final performance. But through this, we'll do assessment and investigation. We'll have a process in which we work with like creating voice and intention, creating space and intention. We'll then go out into the community and then have a series of workshops with young children, and then it'll end with this final performance. And my hope is that our final work will not only represent what we want to say, but it also will represent what those in the community have taught us by going out into the community and hearing their voices and working with children. And so to me, that will be like this beautiful collaboration of not just artists merging together and having voice, but also their work being defined and also being shaped by experiences of those within the communities right now who don't have a voice. So yeah.
Justin, didn't you and I talk about Olivia Lilly in Prop Theater in Chicago, and she's going to be
Yeah.
teaching a 7-week class for us
Yes,
on
absolutely.
devising work, and
Yes.
she's Iranian American, so she self-identifies as a BIPOC artist, and she specializes in devised work in Chicago, and she's going to teach us our process, and she only wants to teach a class of 10, and I want to learn it because the devising work I love, but I don't have any kind of structure or process for it.
Right.
So everything you
Yeah,
describe is you know how you go into a community and hear their
absolutely.
stories and empower them, and then you create a piece and then give it back to the community. And so
Yeah,
yeah, I'm very excited. I was rereading that letter that I wrote on your behalf, and I was just like, oh yeah, this is like a great project.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
Yeah, it was great, Bill. Thank you for doing this,
oh
by
yeah,
the
no, that
way.
you're
But
welcome. That's what I
also,
was pitching for was a
but
comment.
also we but we've spoken with Olivia, and actually she and I have talked, and just because of the holiday and also being really busy, we haven't connected. But we're although I'm going to be in that class of that you're talking about, the devised work, um, we are also going to look at kind of this process and kind of work with her to because I know that she has a very like a structured process of yeah, in devising work, and also making sure that it's equitable and that everyone feels like they're at the table, they're in the room, and that their voices are heard, because that's what's really most
The
important.
very first thing that she has her collaborating artists do is create a collective agreement where
Yeah,
everybody gets a voice. Like, you know,
yeah.
how do you stop a rehearsal if you feel like you're threatened for whatever reason, and how do you create a process in which everybody is equal in the space? And yeah, I just think she's amazing, and she's one of when I was talking about having a younger mentor, she and Michael Burke in Chicago, who directed The Agitators for us, are two of those people that I like am always going to for tell me how I should be approaching this.
Yeah,
As
smart.
a old middle-aged white leader of a predominantly white institution, how do I continue? And that's something I've really, and Brandon, you talked a little bit about this, and Justin, what your remarks, you didn't specifically say these things, but it speaks to my own need for perfection, and it's a white supremacist point of view, right? Is that it must be good for it to be to it has these incredibly high standards, and how hard it is to achieve those, and how exhausting that is to achieve that all the time, and to forgive us, you know, like forgetting to put the recorded button on
Right,
this interview kind of thing. And it's allowed me to forgive a lot of my mistakes, and also I think to be um, a less judge, not judging results, but reminding myself that it's all process, right? The Meisner class is process, the rehearsal is process, performance is still process, right? If you're any good at it, you know, you're constantly growing in performance, and that it's not there's not you're not at the end of the journey until you're dead. Therefore, why do you feel like it has to be perfect every day you go out to create something? And so that's been a great lesson for me in 2020 is not to expect perfection from myself all the time, and not to expect perfection from artists and arts administrators, because it's a process. um
absolutely.
yeah,
It's because you know we grew up. I mean, I don't know if you're from Indiana, but
yes, I grew up in South Bend.
okay, so
Okay.
I mean, and I just know our education, we grow up in a dominant structure, don't we, that says there's right and wrong.
Yeah,
And so
Absolutely.
we're taught that there's reward for what's right, trying to reach perfection, and then there's punishment for what's wrong, and then you know, and ultimately there is someone who was going to punish you, you know, forever for the goods. Sorry, punish you forever for what's wrong eternally, or you know, or give you eternal reward for what's right. And that kind of thinking is like so it's in everything that we do. It's in our arts, and so it's in, you know, our culture system. And so we have this feeling, this sense that if, you know, something isn't, and I can remember thinking, you know, if something isn't done perfectly, if it doesn't look a certain way,
Yep.
then it's not to be bought into. And
Yep.
I think that, Bill, it's really important what you've said, because I'm learning as well that it doesn't have to be perfect. You know, part of the process is just process. And I love process anyways, but what I'm finding is as now I'm just seeing that as leaders who aren't white, or who don't fit a certain type of look, or fit a certain type in stop, you know, when they're being promoted to leaders, even those people that they're leading are punishing them in some kind of way because they expect the same type of things that we've been taught, which is the systemic idea that it must be white, male, right, look a certain way. And the interesting thing is, yeah, okay, we're making these changes. I know I see organizations right now making these amazing changes as they just throw in leaders of color and people of color and all this. But then we forget that actually these people are disrupting a system. So then we're not really actually looking at how we support these people that we're putting in these places of power. How are we supporting this in a way that builds community, like you said, with the projects that you all are doing? And I wouldn't say it's borderline exploitation, but like we have to remember that there's exploiting and then there's empowerment, and empowerment follows the process and then stays with it after the process is done. After you've gotten your money, after you've done this, after everyone's seen the product, are you staying in these communities, and are we building up partnerships that are sustainable and support a community of people who can continue to make art? And I don't know what got me on that rant, but I think it was your need about perfection, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting what you just said about organizations and institutions making these big changes with putting people of color into these leadership positions, and then not continuing the work, which is how do we support that change so that it is nurtured and not punished for not being a white supremacist, you know, from exactly all the stuff you've talked about. And it's why I'm hoping that we all keep going on the journey. Obviously, not everybody wants to be on this journey, but for those of us who are on the journey, and that Olivia Lilly said a very similar thing to me, because I said, well, you know, maybe part of me thinks I should just, you know, get the hell out of the Phoenix and whatever. And she goes, well, you can't. You have that huge debt. You can't hand that off to somebody, because we have like a $4.5 million debt on the facility from construction. And she said, you can't do that. And I'm like, I know. But what I do want to do is, if we can get the theater in a position where financially, you know, maybe we don't get the whole debt paid off in the next 3 or 4 years, but I would like to get it in such a place where it's manageable, and leave an institution that's healthy enough for whoever comes next. And I would stay engaged if the board and that my successor want that, or I'll get the hell out completely. But if they want me to stick around, you know, my strengths are donor relations and fundraising and Meisner, and, you know, I'm a decent director and whatever. I would stay engaged as much as people want, because I do believe that it's incumbent upon those of us who've had the power not to just dump it, but to be like, okay, I'll stay with you until you feel like you don't need me anymore. And then we move aside. And I think that's the part, Brandon, that is so important, that those of us who are, you know, it's what comes next, and let's be thoughtful about how we make this as nurturing as possible. And not
even for the, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Because and that's something I feel, which is great, because you know, I'm all about that white fragility thing. I'm like, you know, it feels scary, and I'm not used to being the person in the room who, like, everybody's looking at, like, what the hell are you doing here? And I'm getting that more and more, which is really, I think, healthy for a lot of us to be like, oh.
Yeah. Well, what I've noticed is that it's not even about supporting. I think the leaders, I think the strength is there for the leaders. It's in recognizing that the people that they will be leading, everything that they're bringing is not necessarily, it's everyone's still coming from an unconscious bias when we're looking at those leaders.
Absolutely. Yep.
So as we, you know, and that's just, I don't know, it's just kind of someone, it's just, I've just realized that, like, I'm like, what's the problem here? What's happening here? So we're decolonizing the curriculum, this and that's happening. Why is everyone still so angry? And why is there, and when I mean everyone, I mean people who feel uncomfortable about, you know, change. And it's uncomfortable for us all. But what I realize is that, you know, that it's not so much about the people leading, but it's about the people that they're leading as well. Like, you know, what those of us who are in leadership positions are dealing with now are people who are judging us perhaps harshly because we
Yeah.
don't do the same things. We don't talk
Yeah.
the same way.
Mhm.
We run things completely different. We lead with a different set of perception, you know, with
Mhm.
how we do things. I'm being vague, but I hope it's not so vague that you don't understand. But
I'm
when
tracking.
you have a different kind of person, they may not lead with their head. They may lead with their heart. They may do things
Absolutely.
completely different, but it doesn't mean that it's less,
Yeah.
you know, just because the way they approach art is completely different.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
so it's really interesting.
Yeah, I as I've gotten better at my own training of Meisner, I recognize that so much anger really is rooted in fear, and
Mhm.
that we're right now at a very uneasy time. Those people who've had power, giving up power in such a way that it's a healthy transition, or people who are being led, like, well, this isn't the way they used to do it. And it's like,
Mhm.
well, maybe the way we used to do it wasn't healthy for any of us.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
my crazy work hours of working a normal work week for the Phoenix, a good week was 50. Most of the time it was 60 hours a week. And it's like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
my God, I was exhausted when the pandemic shut everything down. I'm like, well, no wonder we're all stressed out and short tempered. And so I agree. I agree with everything you said, Brandon. And it doesn't feel vague at all to me. It actually feels very much
Yeah.
part of this journey of questioning that I think we all need to stay on. And I suspect I'll be on it for the rest of my life. But what I do recognize is that's actually part of my growth, is like, oh, I should be questioning when I say something or when I talk about making a play better, like in a workshop. Libby's like, Bill, that's a white supremacist comment, right? It's like you're because people look at you and say, oh, well, the middle-aged white man says this, and if I'm going to play in his theater, I've got to do it his way. And I'm like,
Absolutely.
oh, so now I talk about taking plays on journeys and in workshops.
Yeah.
How do we do the playwright's voice more clearly? And I just think that's the kind of questioning, for me, I'll speak for myself, that I need to
Yeah.
constantly be doing as I continue into 2021 and beyond. So believe it or not, I got a staff meeting in 6 minutes, and I feel like you and the three of us could talk for like 2 more
For
hours.
sure. Absolutely.
But I just want to thank you guys both so much. I know this feels like it was quick, and in a way it was, but everything that you both have said encapsulates kind of where I am and where I think I'm hoping our colleagues and our friends and our families, um, they're all knowing this journey is kind of just really the good stuff is just getting going, in terms of, I think, our awareness and being more and more of us getting woke to what could really be a beautiful future if we all just like open our hearts to it and stop being so afraid.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Find the commonalities instead of focusing so much on the differences.
Yeah.
That's a good start too.
So before one, real quickly, Brandon. So what comes next for you in 2021? Where do you see like West End? Your time frame for reopening, and you
Mhm.
personally, like, how are
Oh
you?
wow. Well, I had some had a TV project and some theater projects that are on the table, and we're meant to start as soon as we open. That may change. That may completely change. I've fallen in love with teaching.
That's
I've
lovely.
Yeah, I've absolutely fallen in love with it. And there are days I'll just leave and I feel my heart is warm and I feel like there's just nothing better than connection
Mhm.
and community and contribution. It's just there's nothing like that engaging with people in this way. And so I think next year for me will be a little bit of performing, a little bit of teaching, and trying to make the most whatever I do, and maintain it's not about any achievement or the product, but the process of feeling joy, passion, connection, contribution, and community.
Mhm.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, I wish you well on your journey in 2021. I think it's going to be a good year for
Yeah.
those of us who are paying attention to what's happening now and where we go from here. And you, Justin, what's coming for you in 2021?
Uh, More teaching. I'm excited to work with you and Olivia on the the lab of devised work and all that stuff.
Oh,
I'm excited about becoming a master teaching artist with Wolf Trap Institute for Early
hello. I didn't
Learning.
know you were doing that.
Yeah. So that's going to be really, really wonderful for me because I have my hands on a couple of books written by Black authors that I want to turn into children's performances, and then continuing forward with Phoenix Rising Dance Company and Phoenix Rising Dance Studios, and focusing on the process, like Brandon was saying. You know, Brandon and I talk almost every day, and so we talk a lot about this idea of we both have unrelenting standards for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I'm
Probably
not
has
saying I know that about you both. I'm just saying I
you know
recognize
about yourself, yeah.
it.
So I'm being like I talk to my kids all the time, and I have them repeat affirmations after me, but just being kind with my words, gentle with my body and with myself, and then realizing that, like, in my skin right now, I'm perfect. I am the way I am, and accepting that, and
And you look great, by the way. Your ensemble.
thanks. Yeah. So just focusing on, like, trying to be not better, but be good, and collaboration and working with others and really nurturing the juice of life, which is really about the relationships we have with others.
Well, that's lovely. You guys it was a delight. I'm so glad I realized only 5 minutes in that I wasn't recording this because it was wonderful. I want to wish you both well for the holidays and sending you nothing but joy and good wishes for 2021. And Brandon, when you're in town, make sure Justin lets me know, and we
Absolutely.
we open our outdoor theater
Yes.
somewhere around May 1, and it'll run until October, and then we'll be reopening the indoor theaters in October of 2021. Yeah.
I would love to visit. That's definitely in the cards for next year, hopefully, because I would love to see you both together.
It's coming. It's coming. Travel is coming back for us.
Yeah,
I can.
it is.
All right. Well, be well, both of you, Brandon and Justin. Have a great 2021, and we will stay in touch.
Thank
you, Bill.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Gentlemen.
Brandon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.